I'm not an Indiana Jones fan. I'm just not. I've seen every single film and none of them have interested me very much. I know it's an unpopular opinion, but I really didn't find those movies to be very engaging. And so when they announced this game, I was intrigued. Not because of the IP though, but because I love machine games and what they did with the Wolfenstein series. Honestly, all top tier, apart from maybe this one. And so, though I was barely interested in Indy as a character, I was almost certain machine games would knock this out of the park. And they did. However, they managed to do something I didn't expect. Had you asked me what I was most excited for about this game before release, I would have said the gameplay and the combat, and the story second. But to my surprise, the reverse was actually true. We open on a nearly one-to-one, shot-for-shot recreation of the opening scene from Raiders of the Lost Ark. The only difference is some of the details in the background and the perspective shift. You as the player in first person trek through the jungle and uncover the traps, and when Indy does the old switcheroo, it's you as the player who actively runs from the boulder. The questionable use of first person is really only evident here. This is probably the only example I could point to where this game would have worked better in third person, as we don't get a good view of the boulder actively chasing us. It feels more like just any running sequence. That said, this is the only moment in the game where first person feels like a less than ideal choice. Everywhere else, the perspective is incredibly effective, drawing you deeper into Indy's world. The sense of immersion is unmatched. You feel like you are the one navigating through those ancient ruins and deciphering the puzzles and narrowly avoiding death traps. While the boulder scene might have benefited from a broader third-person view to heighten the drama, it's a minor flaw in an otherwise well-executed use of perspective. People have been praising this game, and obviously it's well-deserved, but I feel like at a certain point they are also overpraising it, overlooking some of the game's shortcomings. Now that's not to say that this is bad by any means, mind you. In fact, it's actually pretty damn good. And in this case, I think when it comes to puzzle design, they do a fantastic job. They really nail that aspect of it. The puzzle design and the stealth elements, they got that down pat. Where it falters, in my opinion, is really the combat. The combat isn't necessarily meant to be all that elaborate, I get it. Indy is not really much of a combatant compared to some other adventurous counterparts in other games or other media. He's not Nathan Drake, so he doesn't typically wield guns the same way. He lacks that type of skill, and usually opts to use his whip, which is what he does. And as far as combat goes, Indy is much more of a brawler, someone who is more experienced with hand-to-hand combat. However, he usually does carry a pistol too, and that is exactly what he does in this game. So as far as accuracy is concerned, there are no issues here. However, while it makes sense in the movies, in terms of the lore and the world and them trying to stay true to it, I feel like it doesn't really work that well in this game. Hear me out. Because in this game, instead of actually being able to fully equip weapons, you can only pick them up and equip them temporarily before you need to, then discard them by tossing them onto the ground. You can only use them so long as there's ammo stored in the gun itself, or if you need to climb a ledge, for example. You can't actually slot it into your inventory. Though, I get it, Indy doesn't want to carry around heavy weapons, as that would only slow him down and make him less agile. Though one may argue the same for Nathan Drake or Lara Croft, who are just as agile, if not more so, while also carrying them. But okay, fine, Indy may not have the same exact set of skills as they do, and the game cleverly forces you to employ more stealth tactics and melee weapons, making it feel more like a Dishonored than a Wolfenstein, but perhaps they should have made it so that the guns that you briefly carry do more damage, or at least making it far easier to reload your pistol, because the way you do so is a bit ridiculous. Honestly, even though I managed to do it a few times, I'm still not exactly sure how, but hey, at least you can turn your guns into melee weapons too. The hub worlds, however, that they drop you into are actually really well designed from a visual aspect, and there's actually a lot more to do than you might initially think. They actually do have some side quests for you to do, and it gives you the chance to really explore some of those locations. However, even though the design is very much meant for you to explore every little nook and cranny, similar to something like God of War, there doesn't seem to be a ton of spaces beyond the main quest line that I want to travel to, and there really isn't anything interesting that incentivizes me to do any of them. Obviously, they're optional, and so I won't knock it for that. They only add to the experience, and if you're looking for more to do, you can definitely get by without doing many of them. I sure did. Though you may have to at least do a few in order to gather more coin, to purchase some items from vendors that you absolutely need. Main quest items. For the most part, I had no issues with map traversal. You can fast travel between major locations, revisiting them as you please, but for a long while, I found backtracking to be a bit laborious in certain areas. Indy doesn't seem to have a lot of stamina, and traversing through Giza wasn't best, but it wasn't the worst either. After completing the main quest in Sukhothai, I had no idea where I last left my boat. Thus, I swam all the way back thinking the boat would respawn there instantly. But instead, it took me forever to figure out that you can actually call the boat by using a radio by the docks. They're in several different areas of the map, but it's easy to miss. The thing is, unless I missed it, the game doesn't tell you that. It doesn't communicate that you can do that. Same thing goes for being able to fast travel within the map itself. For example, I had no idea for the longest time that you can actually use signposts to travel to different areas with ease. Again, this could be that I just somehow missed it, but it would have been nice if it were made more clear. The puzzles themselves are probably the most shining aspects of this game. They're not super easy, but they're not super difficult either. They're cleverly done enough where it feels like there's some level of challenge without it detracting too much from the flow of the plot. It's done really well. I appreciate that it doesn't immediately throw out hints either, like Gina, for example. Won't give you 30 seconds before she tells you exactly what you need to do, like in some games. It actually gives you the space to figure it out for yourself, and it feels rewarding and satisfying, like you're the smart treasure hunter you were born to be. But what I don't appreciate, however, was when Gina would walk in your field of view, making it harder to focus on what you were looking at. Like, get out of the way, Gina! But at least in puzzles like this, they list it to the side, so it's not a huge deal, just a bit of an annoyance really. That's probably more of a technical issue than an inherent design flaw. Speaking of, the performance isn't perfect, as one may come to expect from any Bethesda game. But it's also not riddled with bugs either. Some people may experience more than I did, but generally speaking, you won't have a ton that ruin the experience overall. Playing this on the Series X is actually pretty great. If you typically play with HDR on, I'd highly recommend turning it off for this game. Since I streamed the game with an older capture card that didn't allow that pass-through, I played it with it off. However, returning to the game to recapture some lost footage, it auto-enabled the HDR, and I noticed a significant difference in the way the game looked. The textures look far blurrier to the point where it was almost an eyesore. I didn't realize what the issue was until I looked it up, and so switching it off and restarting the game fixed it, and made it look just as great as it did before. I'm not entirely sure if you can tell the difference between the two through this footage, but it's pretty evident with the foliage here. Beyond that, I hadn't encountered too many other issues.
Okay, so update. I know I do these a lot, but that is the nature of when you create videos. You never really see things beforehand, and sometimes you forget things. ADHD brain and all. You probably can't notice really exactly all like the subtle differences in there. Like even with the side-by-side comparison, you probably still can't notice exactly what I'm talking about, and you probably weren't going to. Like the only difference is that at least from my screen that you probably can see is that it looks a bit more washed out. The colors are a bit more beige, you know, like so you can tell when there's HDR on there, like a filter applied over it. You can't really see the difference in the foliage probably, but you definitely can tell like based off of the TV, like from my screen, when you're playing it, there is a noticeable difference in the way that it looks. And yeah, I guess I can't really show you unless you are looking at the screen itself, right? You're looking at this directly from a TV, and obviously depends on the settings of your TV and whatnot. But like, yeah, there definitely was a difference between the two when it came to the foliage. Also, a couple things to note. Since I'm not a completionist, most of these things didn't come to my attention, but I've seen people talk about certain collectibles not spawning and things preventing completion of certain side quests. And then also not a huge issue, but still a bit of an annoying one. As of February 2nd, 2025, there is still a bug in Sukhothai where Gina still exclaims,
"Oh God, that was too close!"
on repeat as if she's being attacked. I'm not sure if Machine Games has been made aware yet, but a lot of people still seem to have this issue, and I hope it's something that gets ironed out in future patches. Apparently there is said to be one this month, or at least definitely by the time it arrives on PS5 later this spring.
The story is undeniably the brightest and most compelling part of this game, easily standing tall as its crowning achievement. Not only is justice done to every character, making them feel true to their personalities and arcs, but there's an infectious level of excitement and engagement in their performances that, for me, surpasses what I got from the movies themselves. The cast's energy breathes life into every scene, adding depth and personality that elevate the experience far beyond mere nostalgia. Troy Baker, for instance, absolutely kills it as Indy. If you're familiar with Troy's body of work and have an ear tuned for recognizing voice actors, it's impossible not to notice his signature vocal nuances. What was truly impressive is how he seamlessly embodies the character, mimicking Harrison Ford's voice with remarkable accuracy. It's easily the closest I've heard someone come to replicating Ford's iconic cadence, while also adding a layer of punchiness and vitality that makes his vision of Indy feel distinct yet faithful. It's a performance that stands as a testament to Troy's talent, not just as an actor, but as someone who deeply understands the essence of the character. The new additions to the cast fit perfectly into this world, feeling as though they've always been a part of it. Gina, for instance, brings a charm that is uniquely her own, carving out a distinct space in the story while also complementing Indy beautifully. The banter between the two is sharp, witty, and exactly the kind of dynamic you'd expect from an Indiana Jones adventure. Honestly though, I think this is the most chemistry I've ever seen Indy have with anyone, which might be because we spend so much time with her over the course of this 15-hour game. The extended runtime allows for the relationship to develop naturally, giving us moments of genuine connection that feel more grounded than the romances we've seen in the movies. And then there's Tony Todd, may he rest in peace, who delivers an unforgettable performance as the towering, imposing figure of Locus. Todd's natural gravitas and commanding presence bring the character to life in a way that is both intimidating and captivating. Every line he delivers is dripping with menace, but there's also an undercurrent of complexity that makes him more than just a typical antagonist, one that unfolds over the course of the game. The villain too deserves special recognition. I would say that he's as great as you might expect from the series, but honestly, I think he'll stick out for me far longer than any other villain Indy has faced. This is largely because he's written with a distinct flavor of Machine Games' character. Instead of going for the usual portrayal of Nazis as cold, calculating, and overly serious, the villains here are imbued with an eccentric, almost surreal quality that sets them apart. They're stranger, more callous, and more idealistic, which makes them feel fresh and far more memorable. They're larger than life in the best way, and the over-the-top flair adds a sense of unpredictability to every encounter. Nothing describes this better than the scene with another Nazi called Gantz, which will forever live in my head rent-free.
Choo choo, choo choo, ha 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 ha.
It doesn't matter whether or not you're an Indy fan, you'll likely find yourself really enjoying this game. I can personally attest to this as someone who isn't an Indiana Jones fan, yet still found it to be a thrilling and rewarding experience. The game strikes a balance that welcomes newcomers, while delivering enough nods and faithful recreations to keep longtime fans thoroughly engaged. But I do think that if you are already a fan, you're gonna absolutely love this. It's clear Machine Games didn't just understand the source material, they embraced it wholeheartedly, using it as a foundation to craft something that feels both nostalgic and new. This game isn't just an homage to the Indiana Jones legacy, it elevates it, bringing the character and his adventures to life in ways that the movies simply couldn't. At least in my opinion. I know I'm gonna get grilled for it, but I have to speak my truth. The level of care, detail, and respect for the IP is evident in every puzzle, every set piece, and every line of dialogue. It captures the essence of what makes Indiana Jones such a beloved figure, his wit, his resourcefulness, and his humanity, while also expanding the world around him in meaningful ways. Machine Games took a well-known property and gave it their own unique spin, blending the excitement of treasure hunting with the immersion of tightly designed narrative experience. Whether you're a diehard fan or someone who's barely seen the films, there is something for everyone. It's a game that reminds us why Indiana Jones became such a cultural icon in the first place, while proving that there's still plenty of room to explore and innovate within his world. Machine Games has not only done justice to the franchise, they've given it new life. And if this is the start for many more adventures for Indy in gaming, I'd say we're off to a great start, and I can't wait to see what they do next.